So this begins part 2 of the audio lecture on the High Renaissance. We're going to be talking about Leonardo da Vinci. Now, Leonardo was a great revolutionary of his time, and he had this incredible mind. But the fact was his mind was so active that he had a hard time finishing things, and he very often experimented so that he would try new techniques, and they sometimes worked, and they sometimes didn't. One example would be his very famous Last Supper. You know that he painted this using an experimental technique, and it didn't work. The painting started flaking in his lifetime. What he did is he put oil paint on top of fresco. So you could think of oil and water, and they didn't mix very well. And ever since it was painted, it has been an art conservator's sort of nightmare to keep it together, to keep it from decomposing entirely. So to the left we have Madonna and Child with Saint Anne. This was painted when Leonardo was an older man. It's a great example of the triangle composition style that he developed. Notice how the figures form a triangle. Also the way that he's used the chiaroscuro effect to bring the emphasis to Mary's face. You see how her hair is very dark and then there's lightness on the face. Above is his most famous painting, the Mona Lisa. And this one with no color will show the chiaroscuro technique. Now let's look at both of these and look for that smoky effect. You can see it in the background, but you can also see around the hair of the people that it's just a little bit softer. It doesn't have as many hard edges as you see on their faces. Now Leonardo da Vinci also worked as an engineer, and this work included duties such as designing weapons systems. You know that he designed a helicopter and a parachute, all of these things far before his time, but he really kept them, they were limited to the paper on which they were drawn on. They were never made. Now, I want you to note the writing on this page for the catapult to the right. These notes and almost everything else he wrote in life were written backwards. So you would have to hold it up to a mirror in order to read it. Some people say that he did this to protect his work, so it was harder to read. But there's also a theory that this provides a hint as to how his mind may have functioned. It's known that people who are severely dyslexic often do write in this way. So it's hard to say exactly how his mind worked and what would cause him to write backwards, but he was truly an exceptional individual. So now let's look at a little bit more of the common people of the time. This man on the left has this kind of a skin condition that affects his nose. And an interesting thing about this painting, the one on the left, is that it was actually painted after the man was dead with his granddaughter. So the artist used his death portrait as a guide and then created this painting of the man with his granddaughter. And the proportions, well, maybe they're not perfect, but it's a sweet gesture. You know, and this old woman on the right, she holds a note in her hand that simply says, with time. The one on the right is by Giorgione, and the one on the left is by Ghirlandaio. Oops, let's not do that. Let's go right here to Raphael. I believe he is next. Another very important painter of the High Renaissance was Raphael, and he's another Ninja Turtle, along with Donatello, Michelangelo, and Da Vinci. Unlike both Michelangelo and Leonardo, Raphael had an expansive personality that won him many friends. He spent most of his artistic career in Rome working for the Vatican because he was also sort of a diplomat. With his gracious personality and his noble bearing, Raphael came to be considered a kind of artistic royalty. He is best known for his sweet depictions of the Madonna, as we see here. So consider Raphael, Sweet Madonnas, and that would help you with identifying his work. As he matured, his paintings began to reflect other aspects of life. Now, if you look at the painter to the left, you can see a depth in the sitter, like there's something there within this person that you might want to get to know. The painting on the right of Leo X is very unusual for Raphael. The Pope appears to be taken with thought or distracted as he turns the page, and the other two figures don't really relate to him at all. Now this is interesting because there was so much corruption in the Vatican at the time that this portrait of the Pope was painted, and Raphael did die shortly afterwards at the age of 37. So here's a very important painting by Raphael. You need to know this painting and what's great about it. It pays tribute to it's called, first, the School of Athens. Okay, remember that, School of Athens, Raphael. Make a note of it. It pays tribute to the ancient Greeks and to the artists that surrounded him. The great thinkers of Athens are represented by Renaissance artists, such as that lone, pensive Michelangelo leaning on stone in the front, and Da Vinci, who is in the middle left center, walking with someone else. There is a picture of this in your textbook if you want to get a better view of it. Now, Raphael is the only one looking at the viewer, and he's right there. He's looking out. And you can therefore see a portrait of this great artist. Let's look at a few drawings by Raphael. You see the character of his rendering? He just has a fine sensitivity and a sort of sweetness that comes through all of his work. Now we're going to take a brief side trip to Venice. Although, because of the wealth of artists in Florence, you know what? You don't even have to remember these. I just want you to see and to know that the Venetian school, painters from Venice, was a pretty big deal. The Bellinis were a painting family, Jacopo, and this guy was just known as Bellini, and they had a painting school in Venice. Now, his brother-in-law was the artist Mantegna, who we looked at last week. And Mantegna was the guy who did all the foreshortening. So another Venetian artist who studied with Bellini was Titian. And Titian is a very important artist. You see, he has these sort of romantic, stylized figures. I like this one above called Sacred and Profane Love. And it represents a common theme of the time in which this woman is making a choice as to which life she will choose. Here we have, on the one hand, there's a kind of a mythical figure offering to take her into the world. And on the left, there she is with the house on the hill and filial piety and being a nice stay-at-home, a good, a woman who would be following the tradition of the day. And you can't really see it, but there's these two little bunnies up here, and that means that she's going to have a lot of children. So she's deciding. Cupid is kind of busy playing with fish or something right there, and that's what this painting is all about. All right, so again, Titian, don't need to remember. This guy, Dürer, yes, you need to know Dürer, Albrecht Dürer, because he was a very important artist of the Renaissance. He was German, and he became best known for his printmaking. Two of these examples that we see here. By creating prints of his artwork, he was able to make multiple copies of one image and thus make it available to the middle classes. Now, before this time, art was only for the privileged, because the only way to acquire art was to buy an original painting or sculpture. Now, this image of Adam and Eve was etched into a metal plate. If you look closely at the detail of Adam's head, you can see the lines of the etching tool as he made careful lines on a metal plate. So, Dürer became very wealthy by making his art accessible to the more common people. And he was also one of the first artists to use watercolors and was skilled at many other mediums. Now, he married early in an arranged marriage and never had children. He just had a large home and went on to become one of the wealthiest painters of the time. Let's look at his painting and his other drawings. Here we have the 4 apostles that were painted as part of a masterpiece altarpiece. So you can see, as you look at it, his skill in oil painting. Now, the one on the right is one that you will need to remember, as done by Dürer. I've picked this one because it's one that maybe a lot of you have seen. Many students say it's on their grandmother's dresser or something like that. So, Praying Hands is done in silver point. It's a drawing where part of what he's using is actually a soft sterling silver, sort of a pencil. Okay? Now, let's look at one more. here is this one, and I'm not sure how well you can see it, but I just love this because it's so darn weird. It's called The Temptation of St. Anthony by another German printmaker named Martin Schongauer. He learned this art of goldsmithing from his father, and then he became a printmaker. If you look closely, you'll see why I just think it's the oddest thing, and I sort of love it. It's like the fathers of surrealism are here. Okay, so here's St. Anthony in the middle. You see the guy with the beard? If you can see it, he's got a very peaceful look on his face. And all these creatures are tempting him. See? Guy with the stick. Here's kind of an elephant-nosed porcupine with a stick. Here's an upside-down ram's head, probably also with a stick. Here's some guy pulling on his robe, and if you can see, it's like an upside-down devil gargoyle face. Let's see, here's somebody else pulling on his leg. Again, devil gargoyles. Here's somebody about to beat him with a stick who has his arm. There's another flying monster. See? And throughout it all, what does St. Anthony do? Oh, he just hangs out and is relaxed. I guess that's a good lesson for life, although I think this is above and beyond in the service of great art. Now, as we move from the Renaissance into the next styles and periods in art, the developments that were started in this brief period will continue to grow and to change. After this profound time of rebirth, the spirit of curiosity and wonder at what individuals have the potential to accomplish will remain activated as humanity goes forward to surpass even what Leonardo da Vinci might have imagined. So this completes this lecture. Thank you for listening.